Thomas Tuchel apparently desperate for the Manchester United job. My truth on Erik ten Hag's future, plus all of the latest Manchester United news and talk. These are some of the topics we will be discussing on this evening's show. But before we get into that, please do me one small favour. Smash a like on today's video. Let's try and see 500 likes on this episode. And if this is your first time watching, please do subscribe to the channel. I'll be live for every day throughout the season at 8:30 and 6 p.m. UK time. So make sure you get involved. Everyone is welcome. Go and subscribe. Okay then. Let's start the show off by talking. Excuse me if my voice is a little bit coarse still. Hopefully I'll be back to 100% soon. I'm feeling a little bit better than I was this morning. I watched the video back this morning and I look rough, to be fair. Very, very rough. So I do apologise for that. But I'm back. I'm here. Let's start off by talking a bit about Thomas Tuchel then, shall we? So this story is being reported by the Manchester Evening News. It's being reported by the Daily Mail, the Mirror, the Times, the Sun, quite a lot of newspapers in the UK this morning. And they're saying that apparently Manchester United will re-approach Thomas Tuchel if they decide to sack Ten Hag. It says the club are thought to have spoken to the former Chelsea and Bayern Munich manager over the summer during their end-of-season review before eventually deciding to stick with Ten Hag, who is facing scrutiny after a poor start to the Premier League campaign. It says now it is being claimed that United could make another approach for Thomas Tuchel, who is yet to find new employers after leaving Bayern at the end of last season. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because obviously, Omar Barada spoke to the Manchester Evening News on, I think it was on Friday last week, ahead of the Liverpool game. And in that interview, he said that he has absolute faith in Ten Hag. This was on Friday last week. Man United then go and lose 3-0 to Liverpool at home, which is never an easy result to take. I said on my show this morning, I'm used to Manchester United losing now. I go into every game expecting that we could lose it, which is a horrible way to be. But we've had so much disappointment over the last decade that I think this level of entitlement that we have has kind of gone for me a little bit. I don't feel like we're not a feared side anymore. Teams come to Old Trafford and they don't see it as a scary place to come anymore like it was under Sir Alex. You only have to look at recent results. Like last season, we lost 3-0 at home to Bournemouth. No disrespect to Bournemouth, but it's not like you're playing against prime Real Madrid. It's Bournemouth, And being honest, that partly is down to the fact that the Premier League is, getting so competitive. So it's not like Bournemouth were rubbish and they beat us 3-0. Like Bournemouth were well coached with a good manager and good players. You see Brighton spending 250 million this summer on players. Like there are other teams now in the Premier League who can compete and the competition's got a lot harder. So this isn't me disrespecting Bournemouth. I'm just saying that most Man United fans who maybe just watch the games each week would see us losing to Bournemouth and be like, how could we lose to Bournemouth? But in reality, any team can lose to anybody in the Premier League, apart from like Man City, who just seem to win every game or not lose the games anyway. So in relation to Erik ten Hag, obviously Omar Barada supposedly is backing Ten Hag. That's what the Manchester Evening News are reporting. But obviously this was on Friday. And then you go and lose 3-0 to Liverpool on the weekend. And it wasn't a very convincing performance, albeit two of the goals were the mistakes of Casemiro. Xerxes should have scored probably. But I don't think that still excuses it. You losing 3-0 at home against your biggest rivals is never an easy result to take. It's never one that's going to be, easy to well, it's just not easy to take, is it? It's as simple as that. Do I think Man United would go for Thomas Tuchel? I don't know. I mean, the fact that they spoke to him in the summer, the fact that they've considered him already, kind of makes me think they would. And obviously these stories coming out today saying that Man United are now considering Thomas Tuchel. I personally think it's too soon to judge. I still think that Erik ten Hag has done well at Manchester United. I think the fact that he's won us 2 trophies has to give him some credit. I think the fact that he came into a complete state of a club, realistically, under the Glazers. And I think that it was never going to be an overnight thing. Just because he's a good manager at Ajax doesn't mean he's going to come here and be able to solve the mess that we had at this club after years of failure under people like Mourinho, Van Gaal, David Moyes, Ralph Rangnick, Ollie. It's not as simple as that. But what I will say is this. Now, there's this assumption, and I was thinking about this earlier because I wanted to kind of get my head around this. People will say, oh, Erik ten Hag's just been given a new contract, blah, blah, blah. I saw a story earlier on today that said that if Man United wanted to sack Erik ten Hag, okay, and I think this conversation is too soon, but I wanted to kind of get you guys' thoughts on it. If Man United decide to sack Ten Hag, say they decide to sack Ten Hag in a couple of months' time, they would owe him about £17 million, right? Which sounds like a lot of money. Obviously, £17 million is, life-changing amounts of money for me or you. But in the grand scheme of things, for a football club, it's not actually that much money. And let me explain why. And I want to get a little stat up on the screen here. Okay? Because there's a pretty big difference in Premier League prize money. So this doesn't even include Champions League prize money, right? I found this report earlier on today which shows you... So if anybody's unaware, I assume most people know this, but you may not. So whichever position you finish in the Premier League, you get a different amount of money. Obviously, if you become first, you get the most. And if you become last, you get the least, right? So, for example, the team who finished fourth last season received £164 million from the Premier League, okay, in prize money. So that was their prize money for finishing fourth in the competition. That doesn't include the Champions League money. That's just the prize money for finishing in their position in the Premier League, £164 million. Whereas Man United, who finished eighth, received £150 million. So there's about a £14 million difference in prize money between eighth, where we finished, and fourth, where I think it was Newcastle. No, who finished fourth? Was it Tottenham? Yeah, Tottenham. So £14 million between eighth and fourth. That's just Premier League prize money. That doesn't include the money that you get from Champions League. So if you have a look at how much do you get for being in the Champions League. So if you get into the Champions League, it all depends again on where you finish. You will get, let's have a look at how much we get. So obviously if you win the Champions League, you get quite a lot. It all depends on obviously where you finish. But I think for entering the Champions League, you get about... let's have a look. I can't remember what the figure is. My brain's gone. My brain isn't still 100% working. But the point I'm trying to make here is, right, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent. But the point I'm trying to make here is, if at any point Ineos feel that it's slipping away from Ten Hag, I don't think they'll be worried about pushing the trigger on him, to be honest. I don't. And I think that this whole, he's just been given a new contract thing, he hasn't actually been given a new contract. And that's why I was quite impressed with what Ineos did, because some people would have given him a 5 or 6 year contract, which then becomes a massive financial risk. All they really did was giving him an extra year. He already had 2 years left on his contract. They didn't increase his pay. They just gave him 1 extra year on the 2 years. So his deal effectively ends in like 2.5 years anyway. So he doesn't have that much time left on his contract. And as I said, this report that came out today said that Man United would have to pay him about 16 million. Now, to summarise what my point is and what I've been trying to, the bit that I've been trying to get to, there's such a big difference or such a big gap in the Premier League prize money between, say, 8th and 4th. Even 8th and 6th, there's a pretty big difference. So if at any point Ineos think like we're slipping away from the 4th place position, which at the moment we are, we've got 3 points out of 9 games. Now, I know we could go on a run, we could win a couple of matches and the table could look very, very different. But the point I'm trying to make here is, if we don't, say, win the next couple of games, they're probably going to be looking at the situation and be thinking, what the hell are we going to do? We're 14th at the moment. And I know it's only 3 games into the season. We've obviously played Brighton away, which is never an easy game. They've got 7 points out of the last 9 games. They drew with Arsenal away from home. Like, Brighton are a good side. So I wasn't even that disappointed at all with the Brighton result. Losing to Liverpool, yes, it hurts. But again, Liverpool are an amazing side. They're much further along in their development than us. Obviously, beating Fulham, luckily we scraped that. So I don't think we can really judge it, because at the moment, if you look at the top 4, Liverpool are 2nd and Brighton are 3rd. So, based on the form of the other teams, those 2 games were never going to be easy. They are difficult sides. And I know people will say, it's only Brighton. Like, I don't go along with those types of arguments anymore. Every single team in the Premier League are decent. They are, And I think this whole narrative that, it's only Brighton, or it's only Bournemouth, or it's only Aston Villa, like that, I just think that those days are gone. The Premier League is so competitive that any team can beat anybody on any day of the week. And if you look at our next 4 fixtures, I'm going to get to my point in a minute, and I think it's going to probably shock some people because you know how supportive I am of Erik ten Hag. You know how much I back him, and I know how much I want him to succeed. But you look at our next 4 fixtures, right? The next 4 fixtures for Manchester United. Southampton away from home. People will be sat at home saying, it's only Southampton, we should win that. And I agree. Like, I would agree with that one. Southampton haven't won a single game yet. They've got -4 goal difference. They've only scored 1 goal and they've conceded 5. So Man United should be putting in a convincing performance against Southampton. But you never know anymore. You never know what side's going to turn up with Manchester United. Even when we were playing well under Ollie, you still didn't know. We were still inconsistent. It was still moments of magic, wasn't it? So you've obviously got Southampton away. Southampton will probably have a belief that they can get a result. You know, we've just lost the last 2 games in a row. Brighton beat us last season. I think Brentford beat us 4-0 away from home. Like, we've had some pretty bad results against teams that are supposedly less than us. After that, you've got Crystal Palace away. Last season, we lost 4-0 away to Crystal Palace. Again, never an easy game. Selhurst Park is one of the most hostile environments in the Premier League, if not in the whole of Europe. Definitely in the Premier League. Maybe the whole of Europe's a bit of an over-exaggeration, but definitely in the Premier League. After that, you've then got Tottenham. I mean, those 3 games alone, Southampton away, yes, of course we should be beating, but you never know with Man United. Crystal Palace away, I think, is a difficult game, and Tottenham is also a difficult game. If we were to say beat Southampton, lose to Crystal Palace, and draw with Tottenham, right, that would be 9 points out of a possible 18. So that would be half the points. It would be about 1.5 points a game. And I'll be honest with you, right? I would probably take that at this point. You know, beat Southampton. Crystal Palace, I think we'd be very lucky to beat them away from home, even on a good day. I would probably take a point at Crystal Palace. I wouldn't even be surprised if we lose. And Tottenham, again, we could beat them, but I would probably take a point against Tottenham. I think we drew with Tottenham last season, didn't we? So the point I'm trying to make here is, from the next 3 games, you could only get maybe 4 or 5 points out of a possible 9, which would then leave us in a position where we're only on, after 6 games, we'd be on, say we get 5 points, we'd be on 8 points, including the 3 we've already got, right? And at that point, I would say that the top 4 is, I wouldn't say it's gone, but 6 games in, if you're maybe 10 points off the top 4, something would have to change. And the whole point I'm trying to make here is to try and help understand how I think Manchester United is going to be run going forward, because Ineos will look at the situation, right, and say, if we're to finish 8th or 9th, right, and I know it's early to say this, but anybody who watches my content regularly will know that in the summer, I genuinely thought, even after we just signed Lenny Yoro, Xerxes, and Manuel Ugarte was coming, I said I thought that finishing 6th to 8th was probably realistic, based on the current style of play, the current tactics, the current players, and all the rest of it. And people were like, what are you talking about? We should be challenging. We should be winning the league. Like, that's obviously your belief, and that's fine. But mine's maybe slightly different. And I think that these stories that have come out today about Thomas Tuchel show that Ineos aren't scared to pull the trigger if they have to, because they've effectively already got somebody lined up. And it'll be interesting to see, like, if you look at the odds on the next manager to leave, right? At the moment, Erik ten Hag is the favourite to be the first manager to lose his job. If you go and look on the bookies' websites, then it's Sean Dyche, then it's Enzo Maresca, then it's Russell Martin, then it's Steve Cooper. You've got Sean Dyche at Everton, who has sat bottom of the Premier League with no points. And currently the bookies have him less likely to be sacked than Erik ten Hag. And I just think that, £16 million to pay him to leave is a large amount of money. But when you look at the difference in Premier League revenue alone from finishing 8th and finishing 4th, if someone like Thomas Tuchel was to come in and to get us 4th, whether or not he can do that, I think is up for debate. I'm not sure that he could. I don't think Ineos will be scared to pull the trigger, to be honest. Because the thing you have to remember as well is, and a lot of people seem to forget about this, sacking a manager, paying for a new stadium, I don't think that goes into PSR. I might be mistaken. I know new stadium and infrastructure doesn't. And I'm pretty sure sacking a manager wouldn't go into the PSR. So effectively, it wouldn't be calculated in your profit and sustainability, because it's not like you're buying a player or I might be wrong. Somebody fact check that for me, but my understanding is that it wouldn't. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this season materializes. I'm going to give you my piece now. I'm going to give you my truth on Erik ten Hag's future. I personally think that he's probably going to be sacked, to be honest. Not now, of course, but I just look at the next 3 or 4 games and I look at the pressure that's already on him. I look at his interviews. He already seems to be cracking up to me. He already seems to be getting, triggered. And I just don't see how even in the next 3 games, right? I just think he had to start this season really well. I think, we were literally an inch away from beating Brighton. And I think then you'd have had the momentum. You'd have gone into that Liverpool game. Maybe you get a point against Liverpool and you'd be on 7 points instead of 3. Because I actually don't think we were that far off it. Especially against Brighton. We were very unlucky to lose that game. Against Liverpool, we were awful. But we know that with these players, it's a mentality issue. We know it's a momentum issue. And we know that after losing how we did to Brighton in a very, very unfortunate, unlucky manner, their confidence will have been shattered. And then having to go into that Liverpool game, after that, you can see why we lost. Because these players are weak, a lot of them mentally. We don't really have any serial winners. We don't really have any real leaders in that team, I don't think, personally. And I think that, I don't know how you kind of get around that. Obviously some people are like, oh, we've got injuries and stuff already. But it's like, can we really blame the injuries already? I know we're missing Luke Shaw. Obviously, we don't have an out-and-out left-back. We're missing Rasmus Højlund. Obviously, we're missing Lenny Yoro. Like, we are missing players, I get it. But everybody's missing players. So I think it's a little bit early. Somebody in the chat saying we should get Gareth Southgate. Thank you for your super chat, mate. I'm going to say something really controversial here. I actually think, I've said that it's not even controversial. I said this last season. I think based on the players that we have in our squad at the moment, I think someone like Gareth Southgate would actually probably do a better job than Ten Hag. I don't think he'd win anything. Okay, so he wouldn't win us any trophies, I don't think. But I think in the Premier League, he'd be way more pragmatic. Erik ten Hag's football is chaos, I think. It's absolute chaos. And at Ajax, that worked. In the Eredivisie, that worked because their model was effectively let's outscore the opponent. And it worked. Whereas Southgate's tactic is let's bore the opponent to death and then try and score a sneaky goal. So although the person in the chat who's done this super chat is probably trying to troll, he's probably a rival fan having a laugh, I actually think that in the Premier League, Southgate would get more points as the Manchester United manager than Erik ten Hag would. Genuinely, and I'm not even trying to be funny. I'm actually being serious. But I would say this, right? I don't think Southgate in a cup competition would win anything, So I think in the long run, Southgate would be another Ollie. The players would be happy, the mood would be great, but he wouldn't win anything. He might just get a couple more results here and there by playing boring, pragmatic football. Whereas Erik ten Hag's football is absolutely mad. Absolutely mad. Yeah, I don't think he would win anything, Gareth Southgate. Lumen says Gareth Southgate would never let us concede more than 2 goals against Liverpool at Anfield. Yeah, of course he wouldn't. Of course he wouldn't, because we'd probably have like 10 defenders on the pitch. You see how Gareth Southgate manages England, right? He had about 7 or 8 defenders on the pitch at points. He had all of his best attacking players. Somebody says, what about Graham Potter? I don't think so. I still want Erik ten Hag to succeed. I do, but I personally don't see it anymore. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm Erik ten Hag out, because I'm not, I just think that, I don't know, I just feel like the writing's on the wall for him, to be honest. They clearly didn't want to keep Erik ten Hag, did they? Realistically, we all know that. We all know that he was supposedly going to be sacked after the FA Cup final. Nobody expected us to beat Man City. And I think that Erik ten Hag had to start the season well. Losing against Liverpool 3-0 at home after you've just spent over £200 million, that's not going to go down well. Getting 3 points out of a possible 9, having a -3 goal difference. And if you look at that Liverpool game, you literally had Omar Barada, Dan Ashworth, Jason Wilcox, Jim Ratcliffe. You had all of them there watching that game, and it was an absolute shambles, right? And I honestly, as I said, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but you look at the next 3 fixtures, I think he's doomed, to be honest. I do. And I'm not saying that's what I want. And I personally think that whoever comes in, it's probably not going to make any difference. I might be wrong. Maybe Thomas Tuchel comes in, we get top 4, we win the Europa League, and everything's great. Like, that could happen. Anything can happen in football. But I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. And it's a bit, I know maybe it's a little bit of a depressing video, and I apologise for that. But obviously I wanted to react to the Thomas Tuchel story. I wanted to see. So that's my truth on Erik ten Hag. That's my truth on Thomas Tuchel. Would I want Thomas Tuchel as the Man United manager? Not really, I don't think. Do I think he would probably be the next Man United manager? Ant says, honestly, I hate to say it, but I think we could be looking at 2 points from our next 4 games. As well, I haven't even mentioned that, right? If Erik ten Hag manages to get through the next 3 games, right? Next 3 games, Southampton away, I think they'll fancy their chances. Crystal Palace away, we lost 4-0 there last season. And Tottenham at home, we drew 1-1, but Tottenham should have won that game. So if Erik ten Hag manages to get through those 3 games, right? We've then got to go and play Aston... And the next 2 games after that are Porto away in the Europa League, which is going to be difficult. And then you play Aston Villa away. So, like, even if he gets through those next 3 games, which I think is going to be tough, you've then got Europa League against Porto and Aston Villa away in the Premier League. And I know people are like, oh, it's only Aston Villa, we should be beating Aston Villa. But, like, Aston Villa have got an amazing manager, arguably better than Erik ten Hag. They've got an amazing squad. They've got a massive budget. Like, the competition is so competitive in the Premier League now that we don't have this divine right anymore to just assume that we're going to beat every single team, you know? We're not like a Man City. But people saying what about Zidane? Maybe. Somebody saying, what about Nagelsmann? I would like Nagelsmann. Yeah. I like Nagelsmann a lot. I will say this, though, like, I really, 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 really did hope for some good football this season. I did. I really hoped for some good results. But I'm going to say it now. I'm not Erik ten Hag out. It's not really my vibe to be, like, toxic against managers and players. Like, that's not what I do on this channel. I just personally think that the writing's on the wall for Ten Hag, to be honest. I think it's the beginning of the end. I mean, the end probably was before the FA Cup final, but he somehow managed to keep his job, you know? Fred says, you all saw Sir Jim Ratcliffe's reaction on the TV at the Liverpool game. It's just a matter of time. Yeah, of course. I think so as well, to be honest. And it's not, it's not his fault entirely. Obviously, the players' mentality is questionable. You've got players on that pitch who aren't good enough for Manchester United. So, it's just as... That's what I'm saying. Even if, Thomas Tuchel comes in, it's not like we're suddenly going to get top 4. But... yeah, I mean, we can hope. We can hope. Let's see what else people are saying. People are saying, what about Zidane? I mean, Zidane would be amazing. Yeah. Ant says, Villa scored 19 goals more than us last season and they've just signed Onana. Yeah, I mean, yeah. 100%. I just think it's getting very, very difficult to back and support Erik ten Hag, realistically. I want him to succeed. He's brought us 2 trophies in the last 2 years. I have seen some glimmers of positivity, but yeah, I do just believe it's the beginning of the end for him, to be honest. And as I said, the reason I started on this whole kind of rant was, there's this kind of murmur that Man United won't sack Ten Hag because of the money they'll have to pay him. But in the Premier League, the point I was trying to make, the difference per position, prize money-wise, is so much that, like, if you sack a manager in their 10th and then they finish the season in 4th, that could be £20 million. that you'd make from your prize money. So, you can see why. Just to depress you even more, at the moment, I'm looking on the bookies websites. At the moment, the current favourite to become the next Man United manager is Gareth Southgate. Then it's Ruud van Nistelrooy. Then it's Thomas Tuchel. Then Kieran McKenna. Then De Zerbi. Then Graham Potter. Then Thomas Frank. Then Poch. I mean, I don't think any of them would do a better job, really. I mean, they might do. It's impossible to say, really. It's just, I'm just guessing. I certainly am not invested in this whole thing of Ruud van Nistelrooy will save us. I just think that's a little bit naive. I think you're kind of holding on to sentimentality, that the fact that he's a Manchester United legend. I'm not convinced that Ruud van Nistelrooy suddenly going from the assistant manager to the manager will take us from where we are to where we want to be. Like, I just don't understand how that would be possible. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he does. Maybe the players just don't like Erik ten Hag. I don't know. I'm not one of the players. I don't know what they actually think about him. I think someone like Nagelsmann, someone like a Zidane, someone of that caliber, like, could take us maybe up a level. I mean, that's still a maybe. There's no guarantee, but I could see, the potential there. Whereas, some of these other names that we're linked to, I just don't really see it. But I'm going to wrap the video up here, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I will be back tomorrow. Thank you very much. Obviously, make sure you have your say in the comment section. Please make sure to like the video before you go. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. This has been Daily Red Devil. Have a lovely afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are in the world, and I'll speak to you all later. Bye for now.